Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Tonight, our guest is going to be Raeshann Canady. She is a candidate for Las Vegas Municipal Court, Department number 5. But before we get to Ms. Canady, Jim, you have any rants?
No, actually not anything really explosive or anything.
What do you got?
I just wanted to, there was somebody that I met, I think it was around 2007, that told me the most important race is judicial candidates.
Why is that?
I forget who that is because they impact your life immediately. And so I'm very excited to have a judicial candidate on because it's something that people don't pay attention to, and they should. So it's not a rant. It's just a statement. And I want to extend my thanks to you, Steve, for teaching me that.
Okay.
Because since you had that conversation with me, I've paid way more attention to the judicial branch. And so I'm just excited for our guest to be on and we can ask some questions because I pay more attention to it now than I ever did before. And again, I want to extend my thanks to you.
Thank you
for educating me on that.
Speaking of thanks, I wanted to say thank you to the Veterans Administration over on 215 North in Pecos. If you go to an emergency and you say you can't breathe or you're having trouble with your heart, OMG, they rush right out there to help you out. So, and extend that thanks to former Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley because she's the one that appropriated the funds when she was in Congress to get that VA hospital built.
And
so
I need to say another thing too that I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't think to bring that up tonight, but what's next weekend? It's Veterans Day.
No, Veterans Day is actually Saturday, November 11th.
Right.
Oh, this weekend.
Yeah, but
this weekend. Oh, yeah. And Friday is what? You don't know what Friday is?
Not really.
Friday is a Marine Corps birthday. All the Marines out there, Semper Fidelis, hoorah, devil dog.
See, I'm not a Marine, so I forgot that. But yeah. I mean, just a special thanks to all the veterans that served, whether you're a Marine or not.
Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Put the CIA in there. FBI, maybe.
Well, I wouldn't go so far with the CIA or the FBI.
Secret Service. Right. ROTC. Yeah. West Point grads.
I just wanted to make sure that I extended appreciation to all the veterans.
Yes.
If whatever branch you served in.
Yes.
It's important that they did that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we have Raeshann.
Steve. That's not how you say my name.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay.
Raeshann.
It's Raeshann.
Raeshann.
But
Canady.
since everybody says it wrong, you can just call me Ray.
How about if I just call you Ms. Canady?
I would love that. Okay. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Ms. Canady, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it.
Tell us about you.
Okay, so I'm originally from the Midwest. Mm-hmm. I moved out here about 9 years ago. Las Vegas is my soul city. I absolutely adore living here. I've been a lawyer for 19 years. Before that, I was a social worker. I currently work for Legal Aid Center. I represent kids in court, and I am running for Las Vegas Municipal Court Judge.
Ooh, did she say she case worker, June? You know how we went after family court from 2016 on.
Yeah.
CPS. Let me ask you something.
Yes.
And, how is it that one judge could take away a child from a parent without the 7th Amendment, right to a jury, the 14th Amendment, a fair judiciary?
I'm prepared for this.
How does one judge get to do that? And sometimes they base everything on a social worker, caseworker. And I had reports over there that some caseworker lie and misrepresent the truth to get kids taken away. And while I'm talking about that, is there some type of quota that caseworkers, because I've been hearing all these rumors about quotas that caseworkers have some type of quota to take children away and put them in adoption procedure and take them away from the natural parent and put them up for adoption in the foster care program and generate more income. Is there something am I knocking on the right door when I bring that up?
Well, I hadn't heard that. That would be new to me. I know several social workers who work in CPS.
Mm-hmm.
All of the social workers that I've worked with have been stand-up folks who want to do the right thing by families. So I haven't come across anybody who I thought was intentionally trying to remove kids from homes where they shouldn't be removed.
Okay.
That isn't to say that there aren't some systemic problems.
Mm-hmm.
That, you can look at our system and see that disproportionately children of color are removed,
Mm-hmm.
poor children are removed,
Mm-hmm.
more than their represented numbers in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some systemic issues there that we need to look at. And I think that
why is that though?
Well, I think, it's a multifaceted problem. I know that the department is trying to look at that and remedy that. But I think that it kind of goes back to some implicit biases that we may have, right? And this is one of the things I used to teach at the university level, which was cultural diversity, right?
Okay.
And one of the things I used to teach students was that we all have biases. Lots of people want to say, oh, I don't have biases. No. But really a bias can be for or against something. If you prefer pepperoni over sausage, you have a bias, and that's okay. And our brain is wired in a way that because we receive so much stimulus, that we have to categorize things.
Okay.
And so our brain is wired in a way that we throw things into large categories.
Got it.
You can kind of think of those as stereotypes, right? But it's incumbent upon us when we are looking at situations to stop, knowing that our brain is going to put it into that category and say, okay, wait a minute, does it belong in that category? Wait a minute, why am I thinking that way right now?
Right.
Wait a minute, let me not make a decision based on that until I've really thought through exactly what the situation is. So I haven't heard about these rogue social workers. And I'll say that judges have an extreme amount of discretion, which is why I'm glad you are having me on the show. And I hope you'll have other judicial candidates, right? Because they're not held accountable to the level that I think that they should. Before we went on, I said to Jim, when I get elected, if I'm not doing right, I should not be reelected. And the door shouldn't hit me on the way out. But municipal court and judicial races in general and judicial candidates and judges don't get the level of scrutiny I think that they need to get. And so you can have a situation where people are on the bench and they're sort of playing out their own ego and their own kingdoms. And it's unfortunate because everyday folks get hurt.
Right.
So when you talk about the Seventh Amendment, okay, right? So what the Seventh Amendment says, and it refers to civil matters, under the Constitution, you had a right to a trial if there was a monetary amount in controversy. And back then it was $20. So if you're just talking about kids, there's no money in controversy, right? So you don't have the right to a jury trial there, but you do still have due process. And judges should be taking in all of the information and trying to make the best decision that they can make possible. They shouldn't just take in, well, I heard this and you said this, because we know that people sort of throw accusations around, right? We really want to get—
Rule of evidence is what they're saying.
Absolutely. You want to be able to make your decision off of evidence that has been introduced through the rules, and then make a reasoned decision based off of that evidence.
You mentioned earlier about when we were talking about the Seventh Amendment, which is jury trial, you said that it has to be monetary.
Yes.
Well, what about in criminal court? There's juries there. There's no monetary. It's basically a freedom.
Yeah, that's because you get that right under a different constitutional amendment. You get that under the Sixth Amendment. So under the Sixth Amendment, if your liberty is at stake for more than 6 months, you have the right to a jury trial, which is why in our municipal court system, you don't have a jury trial unless it's a domestic violence case. So remember, the Constitution is the lowest level of protection, right? As state legislatures can give you more protection. And so, or the Supreme Court can interpret a law a certain way. And so we know that, recently the Nevada Supreme Court said, in domestic violence cases, because you have the potential to lose the right to bear arms, you get a jury trial in a municipal case, even though the maximum penalty is only 6 months, right? So you get that right under a different constitutional amendment, which is why you get that jury trial right, even though there's no amount of money that's in controversy.
So what about the 14th Amendment, right for a fair judiciary?
Well,
And you can't have a fair judiciary if one person is ruling to take away your kid.
Well, so the idea behind a fair judiciary is that the judge is supposed to take in all of the information, right? Supposed to, absolutely, right? And is supposed to make a decision that is fair and impartial, right? They're not supposed to have a dog in the fight. They're not supposed to take sides. They're supposed to base it just off of the evidence that has been presented. And if they aren't doing that, then you aren't getting the fair judiciary. I agree with that.
So, and I want to stay on the family for a little bit.
Of course.
You said you're a social worker. You said you're a social worker.
I was a social worker.
You was a social worker. So I want to, do you practice family law now?
I do not. Well, in a sense, yes. So I represent kids in guardianship matters, which does fall under the family law heading.
I have another thing that bugs me because when it comes to when a judge fine a litigant in contempt of court. Well, contempt of court is a criminal proceeding, is it?
It could be civil. So if they're just going to fine them, then it could be a civil contempt of court.
And what happens if they lock them up based on whatever information they deem necessary and say, okay, well, I fine you so-and-so in contempt. Therefore, I'm going to lock you up for 14 days, basically. And they take away your freedom in family court.
Yeah, which is very extreme, 14 days for a contempt of court.
I'm just using that as
okay. All right. I'm hoping nobody's
even 1 day.
Sure, even 1 day. Absolutely.
Because a jail cell doesn't know the difference between criminal and civil.
Absolutely right. Right. And the consequences that you face for even a little bit of time in jail doesn't know the difference about whether that was a civil or a criminal consequence.
So how come they get away with that?
Well, so let's unpack that a little bit, right?
Sure.
So one of the things that is concerning is, we've talked about this. Me and my friends have bantered about this. When someone is found in contempt of court, it is usually because they have failed to follow a court's order, right? And so the person who set the order was the judge, right? So the judge becomes the judge, the jury.
Yeah, the judge is already biased.
Right? And so, I suppose you could look at a system where that issue goes to a different judge. But when you look at the number of cases that come in our system, right, and we can go down the entire rabbit hole and talk about how we could reduce cases coming into the system. But when you look at the number of cases that we have in the system, I don't know how efficient that would be or fiscally responsible that would be to try and switch those cases, right? What's supposed to happen is that when a person doesn't follow the court's order, the judge is not supposed to get angry about it. The judge is supposed to always be even-tempered, and we have judicial rules around that, right?
Part of their canons.
That's right. And if a judge doesn't maintain an even temperament, they can face consequences for
Judicial discipline.
That's right. That's right.
Which is a farce.
Well, I've seen...
And the state bar farces as well.
I've seen judges get disciplined. What I haven't seen is enough people file judicial complaints.
I can't tell you how many I have filed on behalf of litigants. I've never filed any on behalf of me. But
sure.
I filed, I don't know, I've been filing probably 15, 20 a year since 2014, 2016, around that time frame.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that the Judicial Discipline Commission doesn't do anything unless it's in the media.
I see.
That's when they start doing it. And the state bar, they're a bunch of, I don't know what to call the state bar, but they don't do their job either. I think it's a good old boy network. Everybody's watching everybody's back, and they don't really go after, they don't really discipline attorneys the way that I think that they should.
Sure. Well, what?
Because everybody pays dues to the state bar.
We do pay dues to the
and they don't want their dues to be, they don't want to mess up the money. That's how I look at it.
Sure. So what kind of a system would you put into place if there was a judicial complaint, right? Is it, would they all get the same sort of review and be given the same merit? Or how would you determine which ones should be weeded out as being meritless? Or would they all go through the same review process?
Well, I think that they should all go through the same review process for fairness and balance, and it depends on the type of complaint. Whether a judge is sleeping with her marshal during recess in the courthouse, or a judge just made a clerical error on an order,
Sure.
It depends on the level.
Well, I appreciate that you see that there's gray areas, right?
There is.
And you bring up the issue of judges and marshals, which I think is a good point, right? Mm-hmm. I agree with you that the relationship between the judge and their staff can become tricky.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, tricky. Tricky is a good word. It's actually one of the things that I think needs to be changed at municipal court. So right now, municipal court has its own police force. When I worked there as an administrator, I was over that police force. And I will tell you, as a former criminal defense attorney,
oh, wow,
I did learn quite a bit.
Did we get through your whole entire bio?
We didn't. Did I skip over that part?
Did you hear that she did
I forget that
part? No, could you rehash your bio?
Should I rehash the bio?
Yeah, so we could get a good understanding of your frame makeup.
At 3:19 a.m. Okay. So I was born and raised in the Midwest, went away to school at Michigan, go blue. Okay. Came back, went to Marquette University Law School. Hey.
Veterans of politics.
Right. Worked as a social worker, went to school part-time, actually. It took 5 years to get through law school. Was working as a social worker, always working with kids and families. Gotcha. Okay. Graduated law school, went to work for the public defender's office, did that for 8 years. Moved up in the organization and really kind of fell in love with policy, understanding that if I could create a policy, it could affect hundreds of clients versus just this one that I'm advocating for in court.
Got it.
That brought me into management, and that's what brought me to Vegas, although I loved Vegas after coming here in the mid-90s.
How long have you been here?
Been here 9 years.
Okay.
And so I came here first and worked in family court. So I was over the Family Mediation Center.
What year was this?
This was in 2014. So I worked there from 2014 to 2018.
I didn't really get all into it until 2016.
Okay. Yeah. So you probably know if you are going through a divorce and you have kids, you are required to go through mediation, right? Mm-hmm. We had a great success rate at the Family Mediation Center at helping them kind of come up with a parenting plan.
Some judges skip over mediation for some reason.
Some do. Yeah. It is required. I love that job because I wanted the parents to have the power to come up with the schedule that will work for them as opposed to leaving it in the hands of the judge, right?
Absolutely.
They know, your kids and your family better than the judge can ever, right?
Absolutely.
So then after that, I went over to the city of Las Vegas. So one of the units I was over was the marshals, okay? I earned a completely newfound respect for what they do, for law enforcement in general. It's not that I didn't like law enforcement. It's just that when you are doing a particular job and you see a particular side of a profession, right? And that's all you see, you don't see all aspects of it.
When you say you're over the marshals, what does that mean? You're in charge of IA? Or?
Yeah, so I was over the criminal division at the city municipal court. And so I was over several units. One unit was the marshals unit. So all of the marshals in the courthouse who were in the courtrooms.
Got it.
And then one of the units was pretrial. One of the units was compliance.
Sorry, could I stop you right there? I thought the judges was in charge of their own marshals.
So let me get into that. All right. So technically, they're not. Okay. Technically, you have the marshals. There are marshals who were at that time assigned to the field, and there were marshals assigned to the courtroom. Okay. This was pre-COVID. If you were in the field, you would go out and you would serve warrants, people who hadn't appeared in court. If you were in the courtroom, obviously you were assigned to a particular judge, right? Now, technically, the marshals, the field marshals and the courtroom marshals had as their immediate supervisor a sergeant, and then the sergeant reported to a lieutenant, and the lieutenant reported to me.
Oh,
okay.
I was the top dog.
I was the top dog. I was the first non-commissioned person to hold that position. Okay. I think they did a phenomenal job. I did not. Now.
So they all got guns.
They all had guns with me.
You don't got a gun and you're in charge.
I felt very safe. I didn't even ask for one of those badges. Some people get their heads get a little big. They get around officers like, can I want a badge too? I didn't ask for a badge. I knew very well that I was not a police officer, right? I had not put in that time and that work.
So you weren't certified.
I was not
what
certified.
What they call it? POS?
Yeah, what is it? Post. There you go. Yeah. Post certified. Yes. Okay, I was not. Okay. All right. But I earned a newfound respect for what they do, and I gained a new perspective on law enforcement. Completely revolutionized my thinking. In particular, around that time, we started to have issues with like George Floyd, and right? And we had some amazing conversations about that. And they taught me, because I'm always open to learn.
That's a whole show.
That's a whole show. Okay. So technically, no, the judge is not their boss. They have a chain of command, right? However, the judge gets to choose who they would like to be in their courtroom. And sort of as a courtesy, we allow that because we want the judge to feel comfortable. That marshal is protecting the courtroom and the judge, and we want the judge to feel comfortable with that person. What happens, though, is that judges take advantage of that. And so you have situations where they're asking marshals to do things that are outside of their job
Go get me
description.
a sandwich.
Correct. Go get me a sandwich. Come with me on this outing with my, specialty court clients. Things that are inappropriate. Things that cost the court a ton of money.
Like Judge Del Vecchio when he brought his marshal to her interview on a Saturday. Do you remember that?
So actually what I
you remember
think,
Judge Del Vecchio?
I do not remember Judge Del Vecchio.
Oh, that's a whole story.
That might be before my
He was a
time.
family court judge, too.
Okay. So
he was sleeping with his it was a stepdaughter.
Seems to be a lot of that going on.
Hey, keep it close.
Seems to be a lot of that going on. So then when COVID hit, we didn't have a field unit anymore because we weren't going out and serving warrants, right? And so we wanted to sort of determine what they were going to do. One of the things that we did is we helped train them for the new courthouse because once we moved to the new courthouse, they were in charge of the entire courthouse, whereas at the RJC, they were getting support from the marshals through 8th Judicial District Court. Some of those marshals really want to be in the field, right? They want that action. And I completely understood that. I actually think that the municipal court should not have its own sort of police force, that it actually should be under this DPS, under the city. And then marshals should be assigned to the court because it would take away that way too close relationship between the judge and the marshal. The lines of chain of command would be much more clear. And to me, most importantly, the officers would get the support that they need. Over with the city, you have a chief who is a commissioned officer. You have sergeants, you have lieutenants. Now, I want to be clear. The lieutenant who currently runs the Las Vegas Municipal Court Marshals is an amazing lieutenant. Okay.
What's his name?
Her name.
Oh, my bad.
Okay.
I assume.
You did. Her name is Lieutenant Alicia Martino.
Okay.
She was a sergeant when I started. When the former lieutenant left, I promoted her into an interim.
You're making tears come out of my eyes.
I know, right? What a lovely story. No, it actually is a great story. She was an amazing sergeant. I put her in as an interim lieutenant. Some mismanagement with the court. They decided not to make her permanent until that person that they put in was a complete abysmal mess. And then they put her in as lieutenant.
That's a word I haven't heard for a while.
Abysmal? You like that? I'm going to throw some things at you, Steve.
Throw that at me. All right. I'll be hitting the back.
Now, here's the thing, though. Lieutenant Martino was retiring in January, it's my understanding. They don't have the right pipeline to replace her. And the person who
What does that mean?
So there's nobody currently amongst the staff that could step into that role and really lead that group.
They have to go outside the box.
They would have to go outside the box. And the last time we tried to do that, that was also a failure. Okay. And the person who is their chief is the court administrator. He is not a commissioned person. He doesn't know a whole lot about police officers. I think for them to get the support they need and for those officers who really want to be in the field, they can do that under DPS. It would take out from municipal court that expense, which is huge, to send people through the academy, pay for their equipment, pay for their continuing education, give that back over to the city, and assign them to the court.
So you want to fill department number 5. Who's in there currently?
Currently, it is Cedric Kearns.
Okay, that's your buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Is that your buddy?
Oh, yeah. No,
all right.
BFFs.
Okay. Yeah. I thought we were buddies at one point, but things change.
So people would understand what does the Las Vegas Municipal Court judge do?
I am so glad you asked that question because one of the things that I'm hoping that this campaign does is help educate the public about what municipal courts do and what the role of the judge is. Okay. So for municipal court, it handles traffic matters and misdemeanors that occur within the city limits, right? So, as you know, you can have a Las Vegas address and not live in the city limits proper. I very simply kind of explain to people that the city of Las Vegas, if you kind of follow Charleston Boulevard, there's a little deviation, but for the most part, if you follow Charleston Boulevard from east to west, That's the city limits. Okay. So you could be in Spring Valley, where I used to live, have a Las Vegas address. You're not in the city limits. So if you commit a traffic infraction or a misdemeanor, you're going to go to municipal court.
And explain some misdemeanors so people understand.
So misdemeanors are things where the maximum incarceration is 6 months or less, right? And then the fines, sort of the amounts vary, but generally they don't go over $1,000. Okay. But they can be things like battery, driving while under the influence, assault, theft. So generally trespass, loitering, stalking, generally things that are not soliciting. Yes. Things that are not higher level, more serious offenses. So they're not felonies, right?
Yeah.
So if you come into municipal court, you're not going to prison for any offense you have committed, no matter how egregious you or the public or the victim might feel.
Jim lives in the city.
Okay. All right. So I guarantee you I will not send you to prison, Jim. Okay. I will not send you to prison.
Day in prison.
Okay. Never. I promise you, I will never send you to prison.
At all.
At all. Ever. Okay.
And how much is the bail? So I could get it ready.
So that's another interesting point that I will discuss in just a moment. I have some good news and bad news about that. Okay. But municipal court really is the community court. If you're ever going to interface with a court, it's going to be municipal court, because most of us are not, perfect. And we're going to get a traffic infraction at some point. And even if you don't end up going before the judge, you have to deal with the policies that the judges have determined. One of the things Jim and I were talking about beforehand was things like, if you are set up on a payment plan because you can't pay that bulk amount up front and you are late, they will put a warrant out for you. That is ridiculous.
I thought that was all gone now.
Well, no, it's not, because
I thought traffic.
Sure, traffic is, but let's say you get a fine for your assault charge.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And you say, well, I can't pay $495 today. And they say, okay, we'll put you on a payment plan. Well, $50 a month, right? And the day that $50 is due, your daughter breaks her arm and you got to go to the emergency room and pay that $50 copay. All right. That night at midnight, there's a warrant going out for your arrest.
Ooh,
so you're
that quick.
So you get in the car tomorrow morning to go to work, and you happen to get pulled over. Now you're going to jail. Now you have the possibility of losing your job, losing your house, depending on how long you're in jail, losing your kids if no one can pick them up from school. All of those consequences.
CPS get involved.
CPS gets involved. All of those consequences because you were late on a payment, right?
It's usually the poor man that gets.
That is correct, right? Yeah. As I used to say when I worked there, no rich person is sitting on stacks and saying, I'm just not going to pay. It was a 12% group of folks that just did not have the ability to pay. 88% of people paid their fines, right? It's those poorest of the poor, okay? So it's the judges set those policies. You would think the court administrator does, and to some extent that person does, but the court administrator serves at the pleasure of the judges. And so everything gets run by the judges. So if you have poor management, it is on the judges. And I think that municipal court can be run much better.
They used to have the old courthouse, because I used to do small claims court.
Amazing.
I used to have a collection company called Aggressive Business Consultant.
I bet you were aggressive.
Extremely.
Yep.
My collection ratio.
He's usually pretty mild.
Oh, okay.
My collection ratio is in the high 90s.
Okay. Yeah. That's what you got that from.
In fact, I was featured on Channel 13 News for my
tactics.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So anyway, the old courthouse, the one that had the basement, tunnels that go from the CCDC to the courthouse.
That was pre-me.
Okay. So the old courthouse. So when they moved to the new courthouse, where it is now with the 8th Judicial District Court,
sure.
They when they built that courthouse, it's supposed to be a one-stop shop. Supreme Court was there. You had Municipal Court, Las Vegas.
Yeah, Justice Court and
Justice Court, and you had 8th Judicial Court. And then all of a sudden, everybody seems to decide to leave. First, the Supreme Court goes, F you, I'm out. So they left, and they got their own little place over in Carson. And Las Vegas Muni said, F you, I'm out too. And they got their own new building right across from City Hall. But one thing they don't have is handicap parking. Now, I go there, and to the left of the building is all for law enforcement vehicles. All of those spots, all 10 of them. In front of the building, there's another 5 for law enforcement vehicles. Across the street from the building, there are another 2 spots for law enforcement vehicles. And on Thursdays or Wednesdays, I'm told, the food truck goes there and they get a spot.
Okay.
But to the east of the building and to the south of the building, there's no parking.
Mm-hmm.
So handicapped people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to go park at the city garage,
Right. And then
and they got to wheel
sure.
across Main Street, wheel past City Hall, and then wheel through all that little turn. And
Yeah.
could you do something about that? Because I think it's disgusting. It's unfair to people that are handicapped, and whoever planned that probably not even handicapped. And I did file a complaint.
Yeah, well,
I did.
That's understandable.
But nothing's being done about it.
Sure. So I am sorry that it's not more accessible. That is not something that a judge can handle. That is something that the city council needs to deal with, because that's a city planning issue.
You think so? It's a city
it
council?
is. It's a city council
I
issue.
thought the judge handles their own courthouse.
No. I mean, what the judge is in charge of is their courtroom.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then the
Chief
judicial
judge has nothing to do with that?
not the parking, because that's a city street.
The clerk of the court has nothing to do with that?
Well, the clerk of court is not part of the judicial branch. That's part of the executive branch.
Well, I'm meeting with some of the city council officials, so I'm going to bring it up.
So that is a city of Las Vegas issue. That is an executive branch issue.
Okay.
And I hope you're successful on that.
I was all excited you coming on. I was going to bring up this handicap thing.
Zing, bazinga. You thought you were going to get me there with that one.
And I figured you're going to work your magic.
But what I would do is I will absolutely support you in that, because I think that making the courthouse accessible, not just for people who are in wheelchairs or have physical disabilities, but for everybody, right? Again, as I was saying to Jim, removing obstacles for people being able to get their needs met. Mm-hmm. Everybody. That's what needs to happen at every court, but I'd like to start with municipal.
Law enforcement has 17 spots around that courthouse, and handicapped people have 0.
And I don't know that we need 17 spots around municipal court.
Must be a lot of crime going on around there. Okay, so Miss Canady.
Yes.
Why are you running for this?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, I used to work for municipal court. So I was a court administrator. I was a division manager over those various units.
Over the law enforcement.
Yes, over law enforcement. I was over compliance, which is their in-house probation.
Okay.
I was over pretrial.
He didn't mention those. Did she
I did, but that's all right. You were dazzled by my costume jewelry, maybe? Okay. Yeah, you like that?
I like that.
That's a Walmart special, baby.
Wow, how much?
It was like $5.95. Okay.
Oh, wow. Do they do military discounts?
I don't know. Actually, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's actually a good question. I don't know. Okay. So, and then one of the units I was over was collections, right? But you wouldn't have liked me.
I know you didn't mention that.
I didn't mention that.
I would have harped on the collection.
I know you would have. You wouldn't have liked me though, because I was very, very much on customer service and being kind to people.
No,
Steve.
I was about that, getting the money out.
I know, but you know what I said to them? Listen, if you have it, because remember that 12% is the one that don't have it, right? If I only have $100 and I owe 3 people, I'm definitely not paying the one that called me and treated me poorly. Okay.
You pay the nice one?
You pay the nice one.
No, you should pay the mean one, because you don't know what the mean one might do.
No.
The mean one might try to put a levy on your vehicle,
here's the
bank
thing.
account.
The research is very clear, right? We are much more likely to follow through with people who are kinder to us, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, we did some restructuring.
Trying to tell me something.
And I know, right? See, I'm always trying to drop these little gems for you, Steve. So we did a little bit of restructuring. We ended up putting that unit over with a larger customer service unit so that they could be more, cross-trained. Mm-hmm. But so I'm running because 2 main reasons. One is I didn't really like the way I saw people were being treated.
How's that?
I thought that there was a lack of respect for litigants. I thought that there was a lack of
Sounds like family court.
of acknowledgement. You know what I think happens is people who get a little bit of power show their true colors.
Oh, tell me about it.
And unfortunately, not everybody should be in the position to have that kind of discretion and power. Mm-hmm. And so people forget that they are public servants. When you are a public servant, I work for you. You don't work for me. Okay, I work for you. And while I may ask you whether or not you have followed through with the things I asked you to do, that does not give me license to speak to you in a condescending way, in a disrespectful way, and certainly not in a way that belittles you.
Okay, so let me correct you on that just real quick. Here's my follow-up question. I agree with you 100%, and I like the fact that you want to respect people, but we are a land of laws, and if you're a judge, you follow the law.
Sure, absolutely.
Period.
But here's what I learned doing of 8 years of public defense.
And I want to jump on that.
Yeah.
Because what's the difference between discretion versus the letter of the law? I mean,
Sure.
For example, why are we taxpayers paying legislators to travel to Carson City every 2 years and sit there for 4 months and go through all of these laws if me being a judge sitting on the bench decide, I just want to use my discretion?
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to answer those one at a time. And these are great questions.
Okay.
All right. So yes, as a judge, I have to follow the law, right?
Right.
But there's a way you can do it, right? So one of the things that I learned in 8 years as a public defender is my client did not care what the outcome was if he or she felt that I listened to them and I respected them, because they understand how the game works, right? So I have a great deal of discretion. If that means that I have to send you to jail if you have earned that, then that's what that means. But when I do that, I'm going to do that with respect. I'm going to treat you as a human being and talk to you in a way that I would be wanting to talk to if I was in that position, right? Now, when you talk about legislators going up and if they're going to give this discretion, right, you got to remember these are two separate branches of government, right? And so we don't necessarily
The judge don't know that. They think they're making law on the bench.
They do think they're making law, and they're not, right? They're interpreting the law, okay? And as you know, legislation is written in a way that is often fairly vague, because if we wrote it in a way that accounted for every single possible contingency, it'd be a 5,000-page bill, right? So there's some vagueness in it. Then the judge has to come in and say, well, this doesn't seem very clear. I'm going to interpret this in the way that I think the legislature intended. We can get that wrong, right? And different judges can agree, can disagree.
Do you do a shout out, get another judge and ask for an opinion?
Oh, you should. Absolutely. It is really important. Throughout my career, I've had mentors. I've had the benefit of people taking me under their wing, and I am so thankful for that. And I have no doubt that will happen when I get on the bench. I want people who are smarter than me, who are kinder than me, who are better at everything than me to show me the ropes so that I can be the best I can be. But you have to remember that the legislators can't tell judges what to do, right?
Well, but here's the thing, they actually can now. And that's what really frustrates me is when the legislators put minimum and maximum sentences, and they just tell the judiciary, like, okay, well, if so-and-so is, if so-and-so has a DUI, you have to give them 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
Or 15 years in prison.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's
and I
literally use shall or may in the bill.
Yeah. And we all and shall means must, right? As opposed to may. Okay.
Just flip a coin.
Yeah, I'll think about it, right? I'll consider it.
So what do you think about the legislation being able to do that?
Sure. So when legislatures do that, it generally, at least this is the way it should be, it generally is because that was the will of the public. They said this particular offense is just so yucky that we really think that this person who is convicted of this offense should have a minimum amount of time that they spend in jail. I personally don't necessarily agree with mandatory minimums because it does take the discretion away from the judge.
Right.
And when you are sentencing someone, the entirety of that person you should be able to consider. And it's difficult to do that when no matter what your circumstances are, no matter how reasonable your actions may have been or how empathetic you may be, I still have to give you a minimum sentence is tough. I also am understanding that incarceration plays a role in our system. It should not be the star of our system. There should be other things that we look at to help people, because incarceration, listen, we incarcerate more people in the United States, this great land of the United States, than any other industrialized nation. And yet we still have high crime, right? So at some point we have to say, maybe that's not quite the answer.
That reminds me when they have a gun-free zone. There's more crime in a gun-free zone than an open carry zone. open carry area, ain't nobody mess with nobody.
Sure.
Gun-free zone, you don't have a gun, so I'm going to rob you.
So I think we have to look at that. Now, even with mandatory minimums, a judge could decide not to follow that. That's certainly not what I'm advocating, but they could. And a legislator couldn't do anything about that. One of the parties would have to appeal that,
Right.
and the courts would deal with it, right? As the courts should. The courts should deal with the judges. Higher courts should deal with judges that don't follow the rules.
Got it. So how do you feel, and if you do feel in a way that, yeah, I love this, well, let me just put it like this. How do you feel about these specialty courts? And if you do
Steve,
feel,
it's almost like I told you what to ask me, but I didn't. For real.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at the notes right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know.
You missed the period right
I
there.
almost slipped the money to you.
There's a comma.
Don't worry about
There's
it.
a comma right here you missed. Yeah. How do you feel about these specialty courts? And if you feel a certain way about them, which would be your favorite one? Which would be a specialty court that you say, well, you know what, it's useless. We just need to get rid of it. And if there's not a specialty court already in process, which specialty court would you like to bring to the table?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. All right. So when I was a public defender, I was part of the team that brought the first specialty court to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the first drug treatment specialty court. I'm very proud of the work that we did. And we made sure that court was set up evidence-based. All right. So what does that mean? It means that every aspect of that court, we made sure whatever policy or procedure we had was rooted in research. What does the research tell us is most effective with working with this population? All right. So there's no particular court that I'm more aligned with. I want an evidence-based court. Here is my issue with a lot of specialty courts. They pick the low-hanging fruit. They take the low-risk people because they want to graduate them. And in reality, what the research tells us is that when you take a low-risk person and you put them through a whole bunch of treatment and programs, you actually make them worse. They do not need it. It is a waste of resources. It is a waste of time. And it actually has the opposite effect on our public safety. Specialty courts were designed for high risk, high needs people. And that is what I am not seeing. That's one of the things I pushed back on at municipal court. They did not have a high risk, high needs assessment to determine who should be coming into specialty court. They said they did. They did not. What they had was a substance abuse evaluation. That's important, but that's very different from a risk and needs assessment. And so I am partial to any court, specialty court that is evidence-based. I think all of the specialty courts, and each of the 6 departments has one at municipal court. They are all amazing if they were evidence-based. There is a court that I think we could benefit, which would be a domestic violence court. That's never a popular court.
Don't they have that right now?
To my knowledge, they do not. So to my knowledge, Department 1 has women in need. Department 2 has a DUI court. Department 3 has mental health. Department 4 has habitual offenders. Department 5 has youthful offenders. And Department 6 has a veterans court. So I believe that,
my favorite.
let me guess, to the veterans court.
And you know, Veterans in Politics is the one that pushed that bill back in 2008.
I read that about you because I did a little research too, Steve.
Did the Veterans Court, but there's a lot of people trying to get credit for it over the years.
Well, then that's not okay. Let's give you the credit you deserve.
But the Veterans Court, the DA had them change it. It used to say you shall, and now it says may, and that's a problem because.
And did you know, Steve, that our statute actually requires a judge to ask, has a person served in the military in order to give? Do you think judges ask? They do not.
They don't do that.
I brought that up as well, and they didn't like that either.
They used to have what you call it, signs inside the courthouse
to remind them.
Yeah, that says that.
Yeah.
And now it kind of like drifted away all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I should make a big think about that again.
You should.
Yeah.
You should, because when you ask that person, first of all, they need to be acknowledged for their service. But secondly, it can give you some insight into what may be going on with them. They may or may not need a specialty court. Because one of the things that I also think is our specialty courts run way too long. If you were, in fact, admitting high-risk, high-needs people, then a 2-year program, perfectly fine. But when you are, in fact, admitting low-risk people or moderate-risk people, 2 years is only 2 years of a waste of time. So I think it's important to ask that question, to acknowledge their service, but also see what additional services and needs they have.
Yeah, that's the same reason we got veterans on driver's license, because of that.
Very important.
Yes. So, Jim, do you have anything else for Ms. Canady?
Actually, I don't. I'm good.
Yeah? Ms. Canady,
Yes.
do you have anything that we have not covered that you'd like to cover?
Oh, so I guess I forgot to answer the second part of your question. So why am I running? And I started to say I didn't like the way people were treated.
Right.
So that's one of the things. I want to return to the bench because I have
You said return to, did you leave it?
No, return to the bench, the level of respect for people who come before it, because I have such a love and a deep respect for the institution of the law. I think we need to leave any place that we go better than we came.
Right.
But the second part of it is I really want to put in fiscally responsible, evidence-based policies, right? There's a lot of money that gets wasted at municipal court. I mean, lunches for, $6,500.
17 spaces for law enforcement.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We have a huge budget for the marshals. We have, I believe they professionally frame the safety posters, things like that. Do you know how many people we could help with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So that's what I want. I want to return that concept to the judiciary.
Have you ever served as a pro temp or a referee?
I have never. I have done the equivalent of for several years with the Thurgood Marshall mock trial. I've been a judge. But no, I've never served as a pro tem because I just passed the bar exam in July here in Nevada. So I've been barred in Wisconsin for 19 years. Okay. But Nevada won't recognize another license. You have to take their bar exam.
Yeah.
And I finally passed it in July.
It's just like the Marine Corps. All the other branches have to go through a boot camp to be a Marine, but Marine don't have to do that. We can just walk into there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can't just walk in. I didn't have the Marine degree or the Marine license. They said, nah, you got to take the whole thing. So I just passed it in July. If I wasn't deciding to run, I would probably look into that. I would probably want to do some pro tem work, but I don't have time now because I got to run and win.
What about pro bono work? Have you done any of those?
No, that's a great question. I actually have a pro bono case now. So I work at Legal Aid Center. And on top of my caseload, I actually have a pro bono case that I take through the Child Advocacy Project. So I represent kids under the family law banner and guardianship. Normally kids whose parents have either died or they're not available for them, and another family member wants to step in and help them. And so we help get that paperwork done so they can actually get them enrolled in school, take them to the doctor, things like that. We have a separate area of Legal Aid Center called our Child Advocacy Project that works with kids who are in foster care. And I have a pro bono case there. And so, yes, I have a long history of community service. I volunteer at the center, the LGBTQ Center of Southern Nevada. I mentioned that I've been a volunteer mock trial judge. I volunteer for my alma mater to do mock interviews for law school students who want to interview for jobs or for internships. I've done a ton. I've volunteered my entire life. I very much believe in giving back because I've been given so much.
Have you ever filed a complaint with the state bar against an attorney or file a complaint with a judicial discipline against a judge?
No, I have not. I did consider a complaint against a judge at one point, and I still may file that. But I have never.
Don't let the statute run out now.
I won't. I've never felt the need to file a complaint against a fellow attorney. Every attorney that I've ever worked with either followed the law, was very respectful, or after a short conversation, they followed the law and was very respectful.
So you said you 19 years in Wisconsin?
19 years in Wisconsin.
Have you ever been in the court? Have you done a trial?
I did several trials as a criminal defense attorney.
Okay. Have you ever?
Including homicide trials.
Oh. Did you win?
I did win. I didn't win all of them, but I did win my homicide trial.
But you won all your homicides?
No. I won one.
One.
Yes. Out of three. Excuse me. Do you know how hard it is to win a homicide trial, sir?
I watch.
Okay.
I sit in there sometimes and I watch these.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because I probably will be the only person who runs for this position who has actual jury trial experience. When the case was up before the Supreme Court to give people jury trials in DV cases, there were tons of judges who were very scared because they had never done a jury trial.
Have you ever appealed a judge's decision?
No, because when I was working for the public defender's office, I did trial work. If we wanted to appeal, it went to a separate unit. So I've never done appellate work. Although in my current position, if I want to appeal, I will do that work. I just haven't had a case yet that I've needed to
How
appeal.
about motion for reconsideration?
Definitely done that tons of times.
And they usually side with you? Or?
No, I think it's probably 50%. I mean,
Okay.
usually I've been 50%, because you get some additional information that you didn't have at the time, either at the time of sentencing or at the time of negotiation. And then you present that, and I've been, 50% is pretty good in this system.
Have you ever scratched your head and said, what is this judge thinking?
Yes. And for me, one of the things that I think is important is that you have a judge that is consistent. I always joke and say, even if they're consistently bad, I'd rather have a consistently bad judge than an inconsistent and sort of temperamental judge. Because one of the things that clients want to know from you is, what's going to happen? What do you think this judge is going to do? I can't guide a client if a judge makes willy-nilly decisions and there's no consistency to their decision. So yeah, there's been times. Now in Wisconsin, we were able to substitute on a judge free of charge. One time you get a free pass. I actually think that's something the legislature here should consider, because you don't get that here. And if you want to substitute, you have to pay for that. Short of asking a judge to recuse themselves, and we all know what judge is actually going to say, yes, you're right, I can't be fair in this situation, right? I think litigants here should be able to get a free substitution. What it did is it put those judges on notice that, oh, okay, the bar feels like I'm not doing something right. Maybe I should check myself. So I think that's something that our legislature here might want to look into for litigants.
You said that you were a public defender?
Yes.
How long?
8 years.
8 years. Have you ever told your client to plea even though your client was innocent?
No. If I felt a client was innocent, first of all, let's say this. Most of the time, clients don't tell you whether they did it or didn't do it. Okay. It's true. They all say they didn't do it. Okay. Right. And that's fine. Right. But if I felt like they were innocent, or if I felt
if the evidence is
correct,
okay.
Even if they may have done it, but we have some strong evidence, I would say that to them. I would say, listen, I think we've got a good case here. My recommendation is that we take it to trial. But right, we know that the defendant has two main decisions to make that I can't make for them, right? Whether they're going to go to trial and whether they're going to testify at trial, right? And so I can give them my best advice. Ultimately, they have to make that decision. But yeah, no, I would say, let's take this to trial. Or I would say, let's do a motion on this. Let's see if we can get this evidence suppressed, or let's see if we can get this statement kicked, or whatever. I never tried to push people into a plea agreement. The truth is, most people, because we use pretrial incarceration as a coercive method, most people wanted to plead just to get out and go home, right? So when you talk about pretrial, one of the things I was extremely proud of that we were able to get accomplished at municipal court is to make sure that we held fidelity to our pretrial tool that was evidence-based and get nearly 100% of low-risk people out of jail immediately, right? We could review them without them needing to go before the judge. That is how it should be, right? And those people then don't have to deal with all of the consequences that come with staying in jail, even for 24 hours. And then you take away that coercive tactic, right? If they're out and with their families, and we know the research tells us that people who plead while they're in jail, right, end up getting more time than those who plead guilty, but they've been out of custody. They tend to get probation more often, right? And so I would never coerce a client into doing something, but our system was set up in a way that tended to be coercive. And so we definitely want to look at pretrial incarceration.
Usually at the water cooler, public defenders want to do pleas because they have such a massive amount of case. Their caseload is massive.
Sure.
And they were trying to move along the litigants like on assembly line.
Yeah, I'll tell you this.
But that's good to hear. It's refreshing to hear that you said if they have evidence to support that they're not guilty, they should move forward.
Absolutely. Because here's the other thing, right? It's the one tool that the public defender has to keep the system as honest as we can. If you want to give me a crappy deal, if you want to charge this person with crappy evidence, guess what? We'll set them all for trial and shut the system down, right? It cannot function if everybody goes to trial. That is why only between 4 and 6% of criminal cases go to trial. Our system is not set up for everybody to go to trial. So there is a built-in incentive for everybody to plead. But guess what though? That means DA, you shouldn't be charging crappy stuff and you better give a good deal. Otherwise, that's the tool we have. Great, we'll set everything for trial. And I'll be prepared to try everything. Not a problem.
So how come you weren't the district attorney?
Well, I don't want to prosecute people, right? All my life,
Why is that?
Huh?
Why is that?
Because there before the grace of God go I. I am not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I have been given the benefit many times. And when you start off as a DA, right, unless you are in a really small jurisdiction, you start off prosecuting misdemeanors. And I would not be able to look myself in the mirror at night if I was prosecuting people for things that I have done myself. Have I ever been disorderly? Absolutely.
So you're not a hypocrite?
Absolutely not. Have I ever gotten into a fight? Sure did.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't get caught. Of course I did, Steve.
Right,
Don't question my skills. Come on now.
Okay. You say you were in Wisconsin for 19 years? How long you been back to Vegas?
I've been here 9 years.
9 years.
Yep. So I was in Wisconsin for 10.
What brought you? Oh, okay. What brought you back to Sin City?
No, I didn't come back. So I was born and raised there.
Oh,
Okay.
and then you came here.
And then I came here. Yes.
Gotcha.
So I came here originally.
Oh, I thought you were here and you left,
I would never have done that.
and then you came back.
No, Steve. This
Okay.
is my soul city.
Okay.
Okay. This is
All
where I belong.
All right.
I came here in the mid-90s. I
Uh-huh.
did come under duress the first time.
Well,
I
what,
thought it
were
was
you
a
kidnapped?
cheesy city. No, my sisters had to twist my arm a little bit.
Okay.
I thought that there was like an Elvis, like a fake Elvis impersonator on every corner. And
Yeah.
I just thought it was stupid. And they were like, no, it's not like that. And then I came and I'm telling you, when I said, you know how people say I saw my child and fell in love.
Mm.
I came here and fell in love. And so then I was an avid tourist, probably 3 to 4 times a year I would come.
Mm.
And I always knew I was going to retire here.
Mm.
But then after I left the public defender's office, I went to teach full time at a university and I was bored to tears.
So you're a professor.
I was a professor.
Okay.
So I went from like doing homicide trials
Mhm.
and then God bless the students, but
You
Lord
have a
have
doctorate?
mercy. No. But I have a JD, which is a terminal degree. And so most universities say
Oh,
if you have
very
a terminal degree, right, if it's the highest degree you can get in that field, you can teach.
Okay.
And so, then I had like 19-year-olds crying over like 2 points on a test. And I was like, I can't do this, right? Like, no offense to students. And I was there at one point, like crying over 2 points over a test, right? But I was like, I can't do this.
Right.
So my sister who had relocated here, I have 3 older sisters. One of them had relocated here. And she said, just see what's here. And I was like, all right. And I looked and the family court position was available and I got it. And
Okay.
I moved here and I will never live anywhere else. I have the Welcome to Las Vegas sign tattooed on my back.
All right.
That is how much I love this city. And that is why Las Vegas Municipal Court is the only court that I'm interested in serving on. Because I love the city. I love the residents. I think they deserve better and they can get better.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, when I first started this interview with you, I was like, oh my God, what am I getting? And now you kind of grew on me.
And what'd you get? You got brilliant, Steve.
I like what I'm hearing.
Thank you. I
do.
appreciate
I
that.
do. I like
I
what
appreciate
I'm hearing.
that.
But do you have anything else you want to contribute or?
Well, I can officially declare in January. The primary is in June 11th. Everybody will get a ballot in the mail for early voting. I hope that everybody will exercise their right to vote.
I'm gonna let you take care of that. Mark's gonna zoom in on you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hold
And-
on. Let me make sure I'm
And then
looking
you get
okay.
you get to say whatever
See,
you want, the
hold
final
on.
say.
Don't get like the sweat stash and everything.
And I hope you have a point of contact.
I do.
I hope you have a website.
Not yet, because I
I
can't
hope-
take money yet.
Well,
You can take mine.
It's under construction, y'all. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So
Got it.
you see my little
All right.
card here. Okay. So I want to follow the rules.
follow the rules.
I can't take money yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
So you actually file.
till I actually declare yes. So
Yes.
I'm funding my own. So you see by the way.
Not like what's his name? Eddie Hamilton.
Yeah,
Did I say
we're not breaking any rules here. So I hand drew my logo and I
Yeah.
sent it to an artist on Fiverr and she brought it to life. I think it's so cute. But anyways, it also goes with my colors. Navy blue is my favorite color, and then Michigan and Marquette go blue again. So I can declare officially at the week of January 2nd through January 12th. January 12th at 5 p.m. I can start accepting donations. My email is canadyforcourt@gmail.com. I will have a website soon, but I feel like it's a little like weird when you give the website out and then people go to it and they can't donate yet, or like, I don't want to do that to people.
Can't
So
look you up.
yeah. So, but the website will be canadyforcourt.com. I've already purchased that domain name and every domain name that sounds like it, just in case. You will get an early ballot. You will get a mail-in ballot. There's early voting. I tell you, one of the things that I love about Nevada is that it's so accessible to vote. When I lived in Wisconsin, you had to go to your absolute neighborhood poll, but you can go tons of places. The primary is June 11th. I hope you will vote. I would love to win the primary, and then I'm done, and I can take the bench as soon as possible and start helping people. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Jim. You were so much nicer than I thought you were going to be. Like, you had like one question, so thank you. Really, you asked me all the questions that I really wanted to be able to answer and have your viewers hear from me. So thank you so much for that.
Ray Canady, thank you for coming on the program. We really appreciate you coming on and explaining your position and what you're going to do different when you take the bench.
It is my pleasure. I will be in the community. Stop me anytime. Ask me any questions. I will have coffee and convo with the candidates coming soon. So please, I want to speak to everybody and engage everybody with any questions you guys might have. I very much appreciate it.
Jim, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Folks, that's Ray Canady. She is a candidate for Las Vegas Municipal Court Department 5. Hope you enjoyed the conversation and educate yourself about this young lady that's running for judge. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.